All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Today we're going to be talking about Milton William Cooper, otherwise known as Bill Cooper. We mentioned him a few times last year, back when we were going through the book Pale Horse Rider, which was one of those types of conspiracy theory analysis books where they just try to kind of get what is the conspiracy theorist really thinking, somewhat of a biography, but also a very big commentary piece, emphasis on the commentary and opinion side. But the thing is, though, William Cooper was certainly one of the most influential conspiracy theorists of the early 90s and all the way up until his death in 2001. And I had always been meaning to get back into some of his material and to start listening to his radio show, The Hour of the Time, more frequently. And I found some uploads on YouTube, but the problem is they just have so many commercials and long intros and such. It's like you just want to hear the stuff, as opposed to going through all of the waiting time. And through the YouTube mixes, I found the documentary, The Hour of Our Time, which is just about once again another biography on William Cooper, and they were talking about some of his views on what he called the ancient magical religions, the ancient magic religions. And I've said very clearly before on Black Box Radio, we're never really going to get into like theology or discussing like any sort of theological debates and all that. It's fascinating stuff, it's enthralling stuff, but maybe the subject for a different channel. I would just sort of look at this more from the example of someone who is following conspiracy theory literature, and there's a very specific one that I would like to kind of point at about what Cooper is talking about when he sort of mentions the ancient magic religions, because it relates to how secret societies form. There's the famous story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, right? And Eve gets tempted by the serpent with an apple and such, and it's actually more kind of like a lizard, really, because remember, the serpent still has, like, arms and legs. I guess it would just be legs for a serpent. The serpent still has legs. That was one of the punishments of the serpent. They removed the legs so the serpent is closer to the earth and just has to slither. But the thing is, this has influenced secret societies all across the board, from the Illuminati to the Freemasons, the Knights Templar. All of these things came out from a very specific issue that he drew attention to. And that is that Jesus and Lucifer are one and the same. I was doing one of those trivia things online. I do a lot of trivia games in my spare time. They're not really games, they're just kind of like, it's trivia, online trivia, Trivial Pursuit websites and shit. And one of them was, what is Satan's last name? That was one thing that came up, and instantly I just thought, Morning Star. That's his name on the show Lucifer, if you ever watched that one with Tom Ellis. Satan's last name is Morning Star. And that's what William Cooper was talking about. He said, Lucifer is the morning star. But there's a school of thought that Jesus is also the morning star. And when Eve was tempted by the serpent in the Garden of Eden, it's actually both Lucifer and Jesus at the same time. That these two are one and the same. That Jesus and Lucifer are one and the same. And Jesus and Lucifer brought Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden. They destroyed their sort of paradise. They were destroyers, but they're also liberators. So that's how we get to things like the Illuminati, the Knights Templar, and the Freemasons. There are these groups out there that are trying to wreak havoc on the earth because they think that that's just the way the world should be. They are wreaking havoc on humanity, being destructive to humanity, because that's how they believe the world should be. And you could expand it to other things, such as the Bilderberg Group, perhaps. Any sort of organization, council on Foreign Relations, why not? Bringing destructive things to humanity, because that is the course of events that should be followed. And with something like the Illuminati, you could say that it would be very, very deliberate. With something like the Bilderberg Group or the Council on Foreign Relations, it would be a little bit less deliberate in terms of a spiritual side. Of course, something like the Bilderberg Group and the CFR are going to be more associated with just kind of the overall increase in the power grab, and just trying to increase power for a certain group of individuals as opposed to the masses. The basic concept of oligarchy. Okay, well, what do we make of this here? What I just have to say about any sort of school of thought like that, there is the possibility that there could actually be something there that William Cooper has touched upon. A lot of people don't really like to kind of endorse conspiracy theorists and say, maybe this guy was actually right about something. Either most people are completely in, and they say, yes, I'm a devoted follower, this guy is the true messenger, and then there are other people who are just like, no, that stuff's just wacky, I don't want anything to do with it. Well, why can't we just be like, maybe he's touching upon something? What, this saying that Jesus and Lucifer are one and the same? Once again, I'm not really a theologian, subject for another channel. Some other people can tackle that subject, but I would just say is that there can be influences from this stuff. We're talking about thousands of years. I mean, he's talking about the story of Genesis. That is more than 1,000 years older than Jesus would have been in the year 1 and crucifixion in 33. More than 1,000 years older than that. And these things do influence civilization in the course of how people think, in the course of people's worldviews. And one of the things that conspiracy theorists would be very reluctant to admit is maybe the world just happened this way. It's not that it was a strategically planned initiative by a very small group of people who just foiled an enormous amount of unsuspecting masses and the populations and the people themselves. Or is it just that there are major works of literature that have influenced thought, and they have been interpreted in very specific ways that have influenced thought? There might actually be something to that. Because, I can't really accept it. Even things like such as the Illuminati and the Knights Templar are that influential in our current day and age. There are some people out there who even called me out for talking about the Illuminati on this channel, like talking about Kanye West and shit, about how he is so pulled into the Illuminati that he can't get out, even that he wants to. And I'm like, well, I'm just kind of skeptical of all that stuff, and people call me out and just say that, no, you gotta listen, that's the truth. The Illuminati is controlling the world. I don't really believe that the Illuminati is that influential on our current day and age. And especially, not only we're talking about controlling the world, let's start with the music industry. Sorry, Mark Dice. I mean, when you look at a lot of the Illuminati theories out there, you got guys like Mark Dice saying, oh, look, 2 lines on Katy Perry's dress are crossing. It must be an Illuminati thing. Well, even if it's not the Illuminati, it's the Knights Templar cross. Once again, I don't necessarily believe that these things are that deliberate and calculated the way that somebody like Mark Dice would say that they are, but perhaps that William Cooper has kind of highlighted an example of how interpretations of literature could have had a certain cultural impact on how people think. It could have dealt with the evolution of Western civilization and also Eastern civilization, because somebody once pointed that out to me. I made a comment about how, the Judeo-Christian traditions are Western, and then that person was like, no, where did they come from? The Middle East. What is a Western religious influence would be something like the Greeks and the Romans, Jupiter and Zeus, Bacchus and Dionysus. That's Western. I mean, the Judeo-Christian tradition is something of the East that was carried into the West, but of course it originated in the Middle East. And I mean, all right, I was just like, fair enough. I see your point. But I don't even really believe that the Knights Templar is as influential as some people say it is. Anders Behring Breivik, the Norwegian bomber in 2011 who killed 77 people, was actually kind of a big proponent of the Knights Templar and the Illuminati, and he thought they were much more influential than they actually are. And that was one of the few things when they're talking about conspiracy theory stuff where they said that he was posting all those things on his Facebook page, and then the media just reported that he was a right-wing terrorist, but it wasn't so much on the political side as he was kind of just a loon who was following these Knights Templar theories. Granted, he did make right-wing anti-Marxist comments as well, I do concede that. Back to William Cooper, though. I just think that it's very possible that, as opposed to being a sort of deliberate attempt where you would have a certain number of people in Bavaria, in Germany, forming the Illuminati Society in the 1800s, that they were just specifically drawing on that kind of line that Jesus is the morning star, Lucifer is the morning star, that Jesus and Lucifer are one and the same, the destroyer is the just liberator of humanity, and Cooper isn't saying that these people are doing it out of goodness, as far as I could understand from listening to what he had to say. He's more just saying that this is what they are meant to do. That these people, these are what they are meant to do. This is their destiny. This is their prophecy. They are meant to just destroy humanity for its own liberation. And you get tied into these things with a lot of conspiracy theories. Look at the eugenics movement and Prince Philip, all about coming back as a deadly virus and destroying the populations. Look at the Georgia Guidestones talking about reducing humanity down to 500 million. Look at the other things like about the cases of forced sterilization. And there's an interesting book about that called Imbeciles, the forced sterilization of Carrie Buck, which covers a specific case in America, a case of forced sterilization. But they actually dealt with up 65,000 Americans were sterilized against their will or something, as part of a way to get rid of the deaf, dumb, and blind people and people with disabilities. I'm a little hazy on the details, but I believe it was actually the sister of that woman, Carrie Buck, was also sterilized completely unbeknownst to her. She had no idea until she was much older in life and learned that, she couldn't have had children all those years because of a medical procedure that had been done against her will, that she just was... As part of like a surgery, they also sterilized her. Those things happen, and a lot of people would just be like, hey, look, that's not a gross calculated conspiracy by global elites. Those are just kind of atrocities, injustices, and inhumane abuses that could have happened for a variety of reasons, because of a variety of social and cultural factors. And that's exactly what we were talking about with William Cooper. I would only put forward that his interpretation about why we have these things about why we have secret societies in general is kind of a social and cultural factor in itself. That's all it is. That there is this type of impact on human thought. Jesus and Lucifer, one and the same. The destroyer is the liberator, or just that you will just set humanity free by destroying it. That has actually had some sort of influence on human discussions and human culture. We're talking about very subtle changes over thousands of years. Because if you look at anything, about how anything can evolve, it doesn't just go in a straight line. It branches out into webs. And like one thing evolves into another in this direction, and another thing will evolve into another in this direction. And for the people who support evolution, as I do, it's like humans didn't evolve from chimpanzees and monkeys, right? We had the common ancestor. And it's like it branched off in different ways, evolving into apes and monkeys and then evolving into humans. The same way that an idea can evolve. And it's like, if you have an idea 3,000 years ago that's still talked about to this day, it has evolved. It has to. I mean, think about all the different social events that have happened. Think about all the different cultural events that have happened. And it's like, I mean, this stuff happens very quickly, too. Even 200 years after Muhammad and Islam, like, you have people going all over Asia trying to spread Islam, right? But the thing is, though, the philosophers of the time would start incorporating their own cultural elements, and it's just it's human nature to sort of try and put two things together, where it's like, yeah, okay, I believe this stuff that the religious guy's saying, but what about our own traditions? Okay, I'm composing a book that takes some of this and some of that and puts it together. All forms of kind of literature during the first millennia did those things. It is very, very normal for human beings to do that. Once again, social and cultural influences coming together. So that's how we get to things like secret societies. Because a lot of people are even skeptical that the Illuminati was even a thing. I personally believe that they were a thing back in Bavaria in the 1800s. But when you want to look at something like the Freemasons, people don't doubt their existence. The Freemasons are definitely something that is real. I mean, have you seen a Masonic temple or something? These things are real. Think about all the people that admit that they're involved in Freemasonry. Not to mention something like the Skull and Bones. The 2004 presidential election was an interesting one because you had George Bush versus John Kerry, who went on to become, of course, our Secretary of State during the Obama administration in his second term. But you had two presidential candidates, George Bush and John Kerry, who were both members of the Skull and Bones. If you vote for the Democrat, the Skull and Bones win. If you vote for the Republican, Skull and Bones wins again. It's like there are secret societies, and they do have an influence on our world events, and there could be some genuine kind of cultural influence from this interpretation that the destroyer is the liberator, or just that, I mean, you look at the snake in the Garden of Eden, something that is hiding and being deceptive, and something that is trying to do something, has a deceptive plan that is going to be very destructive, but at the same time, this is going to be something that people are just going to be viewing. Oh, this is my beacon of hope. Because again, Jesus, Lucifer, one and the same. They are both the morning star. They make you think that this is something that you should be admiring. George Bush, John Kerry, Republican, Democrat. This is something that you should be looking toward as something that is going to help you. But in reality, it is going to destroy you. So I guess we're kind of just at a point where literature does begin to reflect life, and there are destructive elements that are, of course, masquerading as things that are going to be beneficial to humanity. And it's also, once again, I just really want to insist, to reiterate, and just to spell it out one more time, it doesn't have to be a very direct, calculated action. It doesn't have to be someone who composed a master plan for something. It can be a very small series of changes that have affected our culture and society for the last 3,000 years, and it's probably going to go on for who knows how many hundreds more. As long as there are human beings in existence, these things will never end. It's always just going to be taking shape. We're going to be dealing with the evolution of certain cultural elements that are going to go back to Babylonia, and earlier than that even. I mean, all the way back to some things in the Middle East. They're not going to leave, and they're going to evolve in different ways. But when you actually do look at how ideas and thoughts can evolve, sometimes you're going to have this school of thought that says, let's keep our agenda secret. Let's do something destructive. Maybe it's for the good of the people. Maybe it's just for our own good, but we're going to make other people think that it is good no matter what. We're going to make people think that this is a good thing to do. This is a good thing to believe in. But in reality, it can be very destructive. And you have to bear in mind, making those comments very specifically about secret societies, not about like anything other than that. Illuminati, Knights Templar, Skull and Bones, Freemasons. They might be very deceptive. And I mean, I would say that that's a bad thing. But once again, it's not as super calculated. It's kind of just the course of events in history. Secret societies do exist, and there might be actually some connection to this cultural element that William Cooper expressed about the Luciferian morning star. Well, that's all for me now. What do you have to say? If you have anything to say at all, until next time.